Hey guys, Zack here, and welcome back to another action figure review, and today we'll be taking a look at the Hiya Toys Godzilla 2014 and Muto. Now, these two characters come from the 2014 film, well, Godzilla 2014, which I think the characters are very bland and forgettable. I think, with the exception of Bryan Cranston's character, I think that, a lot of these characters just feel very dry and just very uninteresting. That and Godzilla himself just doesn't have a lot of presence in this movie. Not screen time, presence. There's a difference. Screen time, obviously, is when Godzilla's on screen. Presence is when you have moments, where characters are talking about Godzilla or they're like little things that like allude to Godzilla like being there. And there's not a lot of that there. There's a little bit, but most of the focus is on Muto, which I think Muto is really cool, but for a movie called Godzilla 2014, I wish Godzilla had a little more presence, Godzilla not having a lot of screen time, like, isn't anything new for this franchise. In fact, Invasion of Astro Monster, he's only in the movie for, like, 6 minutes. But, again, like, he has presence to where, the characters are talking about him and the other monsters in that movie and so on. So, yeah, on the one hand, like, Godzilla 2014 does have some very glaring issues. On the other hand, the stuff that's good is really good. The monster designs I think are great. I absolutely love Muto. Both the female and the male. I love the sound design, the special effects are great, the set pieces. Like, when this movie is good, it's really good. It has some shortcomings, but Godzilla 2014 is still a very solid movie, and I think it's really good. I love the tone of Godzilla 2014. I wish that carried over into Godzilla King of the Monsters, but that's an entirely different movie. Godzilla 2014, while it has its flaws, I still think is a very solid movie, and I definitely recommend that you check it out. So yeah, Hiya Toys. It's been a while since I talked about any figure from Hiya. The last time I did was all the way back in late 2023, early 2024. I almost said 22. But yeah, it's been a while since I talked about any Hiya figures. I do have the Hiya Toys King Ghidorah, the special color version, but I'm not going to review that one because, like, it won't fit on my review table. But, I'm back with these guys, and I was a little hesitant on getting, I don't know why I was holding off getting these guys, because these guys have been out for a while, but I have them now, so, let's talk about them. We'll take a look at Godzilla first, but I thought I'd do, like, a double review, just, I don't know, I thought it'd be fun, but anyway, I'm rambling at this point. Let's just get into this. So starting off with Godzilla, to start, we'll take a look at the paint, and the painting on this figure I think looks very nice, so let's take a closer look at that. So, the entirety of this figure is casted in this charcoal-like gray coloration, which, the traditional Godzilla colors, but there are a lot of, like, dark brown-like highlights throughout the figure that I think really makes this guy pop, it adds, like, a lot more, like, variety here, and I think it looks really cool. I like that, in between, like, the scales here, we have, like, a little bit of, like, dry brushing, and I think that looks really nice, The underside of the figure is going to be painted this brighter shade of brown, which, again, adds a lot of variety here, and I do like that. On the tail here, I wish these bits were, like, painted a little more, but it doesn't look terrible. It still looks really nice, and that continues all the way to the end of the tail, which is nice. The nails aren't going to be painted, but that's okay. I don't think they had any, like, major, like, bits of coloration in the movie, so this isn't a big deal to me. Going to the head here, we can see that the eyes are painted white with black pupils. And the eyes here are very small, but they, on mine, look very straight. And I appreciate that. The inside of the mouth here is going to be this pinkish coloration, which I think looks nice. And the teeth here are going to be painted a brownish coloration, which, I'm sorry, Godzilla, you need to brush your teeth more. But anyway, the painting here, the teeth on the upper jaw, I think, looks nice. It's a little sloppy on the bottom jaw here, but, like, look at it compared to my thumb. Like, these are very small, like, intricate parts to paint, so I can forgive how they look. And, yeah. That's pretty much it for the painting on this figure, and overall, I think the painting here looks very good. So the painting on this figure, I'd say definitely gets a pass. Now, we'll take a look at the articulation, and the articulation on this figure is actually a little bit of an upgrade from the original Hiya Toys Godzilla 2019 figure that I reviewed a while back. There is one thing that's unfortunately still here. Whenever you close the mouth and open it, which, by the way, like, the mouth can open and close, the tongue just sort of just floats there. And I talked about this in my review of the, Hiya Toys Godzilla 2019, but, like, it's a minor thing, and it's really easy to just, like, sit the tongue back down, but, like, it's still really annoying. Like, why is that still there? Like, tongue articulation, I think, is really cool, but, like, I don't think it should move with the jaw. I think, like, you should be able to take, like, I don't know, like, the cap of, like, a pen or something and just be able to, like, lift it up. Like, I don't know. Not the biggest fan of that, but it is what it is. The base of the head here is on a ball joint. And the base of the neck here is on a ball joint as well. The waist is on a very limited ball joint. The shoulders are on ball joints, so they can move 360 degrees and move in and outwards like so, which is really nice. We have double bends in the elbows, which is really nice to see. I think that's pretty cool. The hands are on ball joints. Unfortunately, on mine, this hand sort of pops off a little too easily. Like, once it's on, like, it stays on, but it's still just a little annoying. The thighs here are going to be on ball joints as well. Obviously both legs. We have a little bit of a double bend in the knees here, which again is really nice. The feet are on ball joints, so they can move about like so, and I think that's really nice. Now, the tail here. Now, this was one of my biggest concerns with this figure, right? I was concerned that, the way that the tail was designed, I was scared that the tail was going to be a bendy wire, because the Hiya Toys Skullcrawler has a bendy wire tail, and I don't like that. But I was pleasantly surprised and, happily wrong, because this entire tail is just consisting of segmented ball joints. And I think that looks really nice, even at the end here. There is no bendy wire. It's all just, like, articulation. And I like that. I don't like bendy wires because, like, over time, they snap, and at that point, you can't move the tail. But, the tail here is fully articulated, and I am a very big fan of this. So, yeah. That's pretty much it for the articulation on this figure. Besides the tongue, I think the articulation here is really nice and a pretty big step up from Godzilla 2019. So, overall, the articulation on this figure, I'd say definitely gets a pass. Godzilla is going to come with 2 accessories, and those being 2 alternate hands. These are to replicate the Kiss of Death from the movie. And, it's cool that Hiya Toys included these. They didn't have to, but they did. And it's really cool that they did. To get these on, like, the hands are on ball joints, so it's just a matter of just popping the regular hands off and popping these guys on. Might be a little tricky, so I would recommend using a hair blow dryer to sort of soften these up and then popping them on, but still, it's nothing too hard, but yeah, like, these look nice, like, the painting, like, his palms are going to be the coloration of, like, like, his, like, stomach and stuff, and these are all they really need to be, and I think they look nice, again, Hiya Toys didn't need to include these, but they did, and that's really appreciated, so, yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, we'll take a look at the sculpt, and the sculpting on this figure, I think, is pretty much perfect. I think, like, this is pretty much one-to-one how Godzilla looked in Godzilla 2014, The proportions look right, nothing looks too big or too small or anything like that. Like, the sculpting here is pretty much perfect. If I did have one complaint, it would be that the thighs, like the back of the thighs aren't really flush with the back, so it just kind of looks like Godzilla has like an ass, and it looks a little weird to me. And if you position the legs to where, like, you know, like how they should be, like, you know, they look more flush now, but now Godzilla just has this like really wide stance, and it looks a little weird. So when he's standing like this looks better, but he does have, like, you know, cheeks here. And again, that just looks a little weird. I know that's a stretch, you know, and it doesn't take away from the rest of the sculpting here, because everything that's here is really good. But if I had to say one thing, it would be that. But overall, I do think the sculpting here is still very good, you know. So overall, the sculpting on this figure, I'd say definitely gets a pass. Now, we'll take a look at the detailing. And the detailing on this figure, let's take a closer look. So as we can see here, the head is detailed very nicely. All of like the ridges and all the scales and everything are detailed very nicely. And even the inside of the mouth here has a lot of really nice detailing here that I think looks really good. The side of the neck here, again, just a lot of really nice scaling here. All like the musculature and like the gills here are detailed very nicely. Just everything here looks very like crisp. Everything is very nicely defined, and it looks great. You know, the side of the body, again, just a lot of really nice scaling here. I really like this detailing here, you know. And even like in the arms here, just a lot of really nice like musculature, and just all the scaling here just looks really nice. And in the hands here, everything is just very crisp, looking very good. The front of the body here, again, just like a lot of really nice detailing here. Just a lot of really nice like scaling throughout. You know, everything is just detailed very nicely. You know, and like the legs here, again, just looks really nice here. All like the scaling and everything. And just a lot of really nice musculature here. Everything is just very nicely defined. Like everything just pops here, and it looks great. You know, going to the tail here. Again, just mostly the same thing, just a lot of like scaling here and a lot of like creases and everything, which is just, again, detailed very nicely. Everything here is very nicely defined, and it just looks phenomenal. All the way to the end of the tail here. You know, the feet are going to be detailed nicely as well. You know, we're going to get a little bit of like legal information like here and here, like made in China and stuff, but like still, just a lot of really nice detailing here. That looks great. Lastly, the dorsal plates here are detailed really nicely as well. All of like the crevices and like the indentations here just look really solid and just pop so nicely. And that's pretty much it for the detailing on this figure. So the detailing here, I think definitely gets a pass. Everything looks great. And that's pretty much it for Godzilla. Now moving on to the Muto. And really quick, I just want to say, you know, like, I think it's really cool that Hiya made, like, an articulated Muto figure like this. Because, you know, like, in the past, we haven't really gotten a lot of, like, Muto stuff, you know. Back in 2014, we had that Bandai vinyl of the male Muto. We had that weird egg thing. And then we had that premium Bandai set. But nothing like this. And it's really cool that Hiya made, like, a figure of the female Muto. Hopefully one day we'll get the male Muto, but I'm rambling. Let's talk about the paint. So, the painting on this figure, I mean, for the most part, like, you know, different colors, but it's going to be, like, applied similarly to how it was applied on Godzilla. You know, pretty much the entirety of this figure is going to be casted in this, like, charcoal gray coloration. And there's going to be, like, a lot of, like, dry brushing throughout the figure, like, on the legs here. That I think looks really nice. You know, it makes the detailing really pop here. And yeah, just a lot of, like, little hints of, like, brown and, like, you know, like, brighter grays, which looks really nice here. I like that. You know, the back of the head here, we just have, like, a little bit of, like, some brown here. You know, nothing, like, too crazy color-wise, but still, like, the painting that's here looks really nice. Going to the head, we can see that the eyes are painted red. And the inside of the mouth here is going to be painted a nice pinkish coloration with a little bit of a glossy finish, which is really nice. And that's pretty much it for the painting here. The painting here looks great. Definitely gets a pass. Now, we'll take a look at the articulation. And the articulation here, I think, is pretty solid. So let's take a closer look. So starting off with the head here, the mouth can open and close. And unlike with Godzilla, the tongue is not articulated, so you don't have to worry about the tongue just resetting to the middle of the mouth, which is really nice. Muto can look up a little bit, and can't really look down that much, but that's okay. The shoulders here are going to be on ball joints. The joints on this figure are a little tight, so do be a little careful when moving this figure. But the shoulders are on ball joints. We have some bends in the elbows here. And some articulation here as well. The feet can move downwards, like so. And they can swivel. Again, the joints are very tight on this figure, so do be careful when you move it around like this. The other set of limbs here, we have a hinge joint here. Some articulation here that can also swivel a little bit. Another bend here. And the same articulation for the feet. So, there's that. The hind limbs here, it's pretty much the same. They are on ball joints. Again, very tight ball joints. You know, we have some bends in the knees here. Some articulation here. The feet here can swivel. And they can move a little bit as well. Again, like, can't stress this enough. The joints are very tight. Please be careful when you move this figure around like this. The little arms here, they're going to be on ball joints. And there's going to be a bend here as well. And that's pretty much it for the articulation on this figure. And it's really good. You know, everything that should move, moves on this figure, and I think that's really nice. Some of the joints are a little tight, so when you do, like, pose this figure, I do recommend that you be very careful. But still, the articulation here is very solid, so the articulation, I'd say, definitely gets a pass. One thing I forgot to point out with the articulation, this figure actually has some articulation in the waist here. You know, this lady here has a bit of an ab crunch. Nothing like too crazy, but still there's like an ab crunch here, which is nice. And it's also on a little bit of a swivel. Can't move a whole lot, but you can get some movement here. So, yeah. Just want to point that out because I forgot. Now, we'll take a look at the sculpt. And the sculpting on this figure, it's pretty much perfect, right? Like, this is one-to-one how the female Muto looked in Godzilla 2014. I think, you know, like, the proportions look great. Nothing looks too big or too small or too out of place. Like, overall, the sculpting here is pretty much perfect. And that's all I really have to say. You know, there's nothing I really dislike about the sculpt here, right? I think, like Hiya Toys did a great job, like, replicating and, you know, getting the, you know, capturing the likeness of Muto from Godzilla 2014. You know, again, like, nothing looks weird. You know, Godzilla looks great, too, you know. I mean, I did talk about, like, the weird, like, thing with, like, you know, his ass, but, like, you know, like, that problem isn't really here. And, yeah, I just don't really have a lot to say, other than the sculpting here is pretty much perfect. So, yeah, sculpting on this figure is great. Definitely gets a pass. Now, we'll take a look at the detailing. And the detailing on this figure, I think, looks very good. So let's take a closer look. So starting off with the head here, we can see a lot of, like, ridges and a lot of, like, cracks and crevices, like, in the face here, which I think looks very nice, you know, for, like, such a small head. I mean, you can see it next to my thumb. Like, the detailing here, it looks very good. And even on, like, the back of the head here, just a lot of really nice detailing here. You know, like, the top of the head here, again, just a lot of really nice looking, like, little, like, cracks and, like, crevices and whatnot. There's a noticeable seam here, but that's okay. Going to the limbs here, Again, just a lot of really nice detailing here. All like the cracks and like crevices and whatnot. Really gives off like, the insect vibe. And I think that's really, done really well here. Which is weird because I don't know how true this is, but apparently the Mutos are mammals, which I don't get how that works. But anyway, yeah, again, just a lot of really nice detailing here. Again, all like the little cracks and like crevices here. Just a lot of really nice detailing here in the limbs. Just everything here is just very nicely defined. So yeah, everything here looks great. The hind leg here, we lose a little bit of that detailing here, but again, the rest of the hind limb here is detailed very nicely. And again, just a lot of really nice, like ridges here, a lot of like really nice like cracks and crevices that, again, just gives off that, insect sort of vibe really well. And I like that a lot here. The back of the figure, again, just a lot of really nice like creases and everything, which looks nice. And if we just move the forelimbs up like so, we can see some more detailing, on the underside of the figure here. And again, everything here looks really nice. The detailing is very nicely defined here. It just looks great. Again, very insect-like. And the forelimbs here, the smaller ones, again, just a lot of really nice detailing. All of like the cracks and everything are detailed very nicely. Everything here is just very nicely defined. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the detailing on this figure. And in case I haven't made it clear, yes, the detailing on this figure I think is very solid. So the detailing here, I'd say definitely gets a pass. Now, we'll do some size comparisons, and of course, to start, here we have the two main attractions of this video, and I think they scale pretty nicely. I think that's pretty much like how they looked scale-wise in the movie, so I'm pretty happy with this. Here we have the Hiya Toys Godzilla 2019, and, I love this figure. Like, this is a really nice figure, but I do prefer the smaller size of this figure, When it comes to Godzilla figures, like, the gold standard for me is like 6 inches. Anything higher or lower than that, it's not really my thing. And again, I love this figure a lot, but I just prefer the smaller scale here. I get that Godzilla did grow a little bit from 2014 to King of the Monsters, but again, like, I just prefer like the 6-inch scale rather than the 7-inch scale with this guy. Here we have the original NECA Godzilla 2014. Like, this figure means a lot to me. I got this figure when I was in middle school at FYE. So again, like, this figure has a lot of like sentimental value, but this guy is just much better. Just in every way, this guy just blows this guy out of the water. Again, like, I love this figure. It means a lot to me, but this guy's better. And of course, here we have some hand sanitizer. And here we have Dr. Oh, I can get him to stand. Here we have Dr. Billy Grant. So at the end of the day, should you get these figures? Yes, I think these are both very nice figures. Hiya once again did a bang-up job, bringing these figures to life. It's really nice to have, it's really nice to have, like, a Muto figure of this quality, right? Because we've never had, like, a Muto figure of this quality before, and I think that's really cool. But even, like, having a really nice, like, 2014 Godzilla figure like this, because, we had the NECA, but that was all the way back in 2014. And we did get the Monster Arts Godzilla 2014, but that just didn't look right. So it's nice that Hiya came around and made, like, a proper, like, Godzilla 2014 and female Muto figure. Hopefully one day they will get around to making the male Muto, but only time will tell there. But at the end of the day, I really like these figures, and I definitely recommend that you pick them both up. Now, as far as prices go, now, I got these guys from Big Bad Toy Store. Both of them costed like $50 each, which I think is a pretty good price, If you had to pick one, honestly, I think it boils down to personal preference, because I think these are both very nice figures, right? It's not a matter of, like, one is better than the other one. I think these are both, like, equally very good. So ultimately, I think it does boil down to personal preference which one you should get. But if you can get both, get both. Though if you are planning on getting these figures, I'd say get them now, because Big Bad Toy Store, as of me recording this, still has these two in stock. But unfortunately, like once they're out of stock, they're going to be a little more expensive because the tariff situation going on. And I talked about it a little bit, in my previous video, but tariffs, in short, you know, these are just like taxes that, foreign countries have to pay for like, imported stuff. And, Hiya Toys is a Chinese-based company, so, you know, these figures, as far as like, us like US collectors go, like these guys are going to get a little more expensive, which is very frustrating, but there's not really a whole lot we can do. So yeah. So if you want to get these figures, I'd say get them now before Big Bad Toy Store runs out of stock. But yeah, still, these are very nice figures, and I am very happy with them. So that being said, that is it for today. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video. Peace, Zack out.